Pnawn da. Good afternoon. I was beginning to wonder where Dermot was going with that introduction, the Star Wars stuff. I thought he might have heard me walking up the stairs and was going to liken me to Darth Vader or something. I haven't got a PowerPoint to show you, but I did wear a very loud tie to give you something to look at. I don't know whether that helps. When people ask me what I do for a living, and I tell them I'm a procurement manager, and they tend to say, well, what does that involve then? And I always go back to the sort of the one-to-one appraisals that I have with my head of service and my director. And they're very clear about what they want me to do, and that's really helpful. And what they say is, look, it's hard times for all out there. Budgets are reducing. You know, we've got a problem. So, through procurement, we want you to support the local economy because that's important to us. We want you to make sure that you're delivering social benefits because that's a really big issue now. It's a big thing for us, so you make sure you do that. But of course, the lawyers tell me you've got to watch the remedies directive, so be careful what you do. And by the way, when you're doing it, you need to be collaborating as well. Oh, and by the way, I'd like some cashable efficiencies. So it's fairly straightforward, really, in terms of what the expectation is. Complex, maybe, but straightforward in terms of what the expectation is, as I say. And I'm here today, really, to talk about the practical aspects of it. Alison has run through some stuff this afternoon about the huge effort that's happening nationally in terms of trying to address these issues. But I think, really, from looking at it with a local perspective, I'm interested in the responsibility that we carry in terms of addressing those local issues. Because I do think that we're probably in the best position to offer the sort of support necessary, really. I do sometimes think, well, how much impact can we have and why do we bother, really? And I guess the best illustration that I've got of that at the moment is probably in the construction world, where we've now got very big fish swimming in a very small sea. And I think the can-do toolkit was mentioned by Dermot, I believe, early on. In the construction world, we have now got organisations, we've now got firms bidding for work that 2-3 years ago they would never have touched with a barge pole. It would not have been worth their while. So that's how the market is changing. And I think the fear there, my biggest fear there probably, is that if that does happen and the bigger companies do come in and take over, the net effect of that is going to be to eliminate competition amongst my smaller regional suppliers. And I don't think that's healthy for the market. And that's kind of influencing the thinking in terms of the direction that Challange is going at the moment. So I think, to reiterate, I think we have got a responsibility to address these issues, and I think they are issues that need to be addressed locally. The Squid approach has been mentioned by Alison. We, Challange, have certainly signed up to this in a very big way. We think it's a very effective way of delivering this support. I think the Squid approach linked to the supplier development service particularly, and also to the Chambers of Trade locally, this is a sort of an approach that we've developed that attempts to put what is almost sort of a seamless service together in terms of that level of support and the approach that we're taking to procurement issues out there. We go back to the sort of traditional stuff, the meet the buyer days, that kind of thing. Meet buyer days, you've got to be doing it. You've got to be targeting it to the work that's coming. You've got to do it well in advance. You've got to go beyond that. You've got to do briefing days to tell the market what you intend to do and when you intend to do it and how you intend to do it. You need to be very open and very transparent about the way you intend to run these contracts in future, and you need to talk about and you need to take views on lotting strategies and size of contract and all the rest of it. You can only get that from the marketplace, I feel, really. Challange, again, we're the only ones that I know of who have gone down this road, and again, it's something that it's us reacting to what the market is saying to us. We, in the construction world particularly, for example, we've we've let construction frameworks with our first-tier contractors. And our first-tier contractors have been coming back to us and saying, we would like to look at our supply chains. Now, as a local authority, you've run these Meet the Buyer days, you've run these engagement days. Would you be prepared to work with us and perhaps the local Chamber of Trade and the Supply Development Service to put on a Meet the Buyer day for the first-tier supplier, where we would like to meet small tradesmen and small companies out there who we would like to use as our supply chain. Now, we've got our first-tier partners saying that to us, and for years we've had the very small companies coming back to us and saying exactly that thing, you know, how do we get in there? How do we get into this? You're awarding framework contracts, but how do we get a crack at the business that's coming up? So I think that's an area that we're going to put some effort into over the next year. I think we've certainly held one event that turned out to be extremely successful. We've got another one planned. We would like to see all our first-tier contractors going down that route because we think there are huge advantages for themselves and for the wider supply chain out there. We would like to be able to score that sort of initiative in terms of the evaluation criteria that we use on the next tender, because they're clearly making huge efforts to broaden their supply chain and to deliver social benefits through that supply chain, and we think that should be recognised. However, having said that, we've got the Remedies Directive and the rules are complicated. We've got an increased challenge culture, there is no doubt about that, and we are living in fear. The procurement profession generally tends to be risk averse. We tend to be quite traditional in our approach, and everything that's happened since December 2009, if anything, has made us more cautious and more worried, and that's compounded by the very point that Dermot made. The way that the rules are written are extremely difficult to interpret, and we're watching every piece of case law that comes up to try and read into it what the direction is going to be. I think that the danger is, you know, the idea of the Remedies Directive was that it increased transparency. I think in practice, we are now becoming so risk averse that I think the danger is that we're going to clam up when we need to be opening up. At the very time when we need to be more transparent and more open, we're beginning to gather the walls around ourselves and be very protective about, you know, how much do we say and you know, how far do we think we can push this envelope. We're very, very nervous. Having said that, there are some things that we have tried that seem to be bringing benefits, and one of them certainly would be the Opening Doors initiative that all public bodies in Wales signed up to. That we undertook there to advertise anything over £25,000 on the Sell to Wales website. We were worried about the extent of the increased response that we'd have and how we were going to manage that. We bit the bullet to a certain extent and tried it. Everything over 25k goes on that Sell to Wales website. And after about 12 months, we did a review of how things had panned out. And we found that we were getting a 40% increased response rate to the business that was being advertised there. Now, the 40% increase in response rate means that there is more work in terms of the analysis and the evaluation. But what we were finding was that at the same time as advertising the stuff on Sell to Wales, we were trying to simplify our documentation and make it much clearer from the outset what it was we were looking for in terms of that exercise. And what we've definitely found is that if you do that, businesses self-select. So although there's been an increase of 40%, there is definitely self-selection going on there because the responses that we are getting are of a higher quality. And I think the important point there, particularly from the supplier's perspective, is the cost of bidding is astronomical. So if you can read something briefly and decide this is not for you, then that is going to save you a great deal of money. But it involves investing time up front in getting all that documentation straight, in making very clear what it is you're after from the marketplace on that exercise. The winning and tendering The winning and tendering approach that we're here to talk about today, my director is a fairly down-to-earth guy who said to me, if you're going to be involved in this winning and tendering, what's the benefit for us? What's the benefit for Carmarthenshire in your involvement here? And I think although it's very early days yet, this is the launch event, but even with what we've seen coming through so far, there are real benefits here. We've touched on some of the stuff already this afternoon, but if you look at the tender review service and the tender ready diagnostic, that tender review service is a phenomenal piece of work. It is so useful. It's a plain English guide to where you went wrong and where you could have done better, and I guarantee you it would improve your bid next time. It's absolutely clear from the start that that's going to work. That is something that I'm really looking forward to working with, and I really expect some big things from that, I think. The lower value procurement is a dilemma. I think it was Brendan, I think it was mentioned, or sorry, Alison mentioned the TenderWise project that we were involved in some years ago. And at that TenderWise project, we stood there, and I'm as guilty as anybody else. I spouted about how we were trying to make our tenders more accessible and how anything over 75k was put out in such and such a way, and we were intending to advertise everything over 25k on the Sell to Wales website. And a little chap in the second row said, "Oh, I'm glad to hear that you're doing things there, but quite honestly, I dream of that size of contract. I'm more interested in the sort of 5k and 8k contracts, and what are you doing about those?" And I sort of stood there and looked at Ginter, and Ginter looked at me, and we both looked at Dermot. And Dermot sort of nudged across and he said, "We're discriminating against these people." He said it with an Irish accent, obviously. But it was the first time we'd looked at it that way. That is a way of looking at it. In not making that business available, not making that business transparent, not advertising that opportunity, it could be interpreted as discrimination. We still haven't cracked that one. We think we've cracked over 25, but the stuff below 25 we have got a problem with, because as things stand at the moment, we don't have a good way of dealing with that. And it's something that, again, I'm hoping this project is going to turn up some answers for. Competency framework, badly needed, much needed. It's going to be in plain English, plain language, great. Remedies work package, my God, am I looking forward to that one. I mean, that will be a huge bonus for the buyers and suppliers out there, because there is huge uncertainty at the moment. There are a lot of legal firms making a lot of money out of the interpretation of it. I still don't see any clarity myself. I'm certainly not happy with that, with the situation where we are at the moment. I'm not clear in my own mind, and at the moment I will be tested in court. If I get that wrong, I will be tested in court, and I will not be a popular guy in my authority. That's not an excuse for not trying to do something. We've got to try and do something, otherwise the end result will be that we all lose out, I think. We've done a lot over the years in engaging with smaller suppliers, and that's been reasonably successful through the procurement surgeries, first of all, which were general surgeries, and then later through much more targeted events. And it's surprising how many of those people still talk about the TenderWise events. They still talk about the talking heads as well, Alison. But I mean, what suppliers are telling me is that they're looking for anything that will simplify and explain and support. And I think those three things are really what the winning and tendering stuff is about. I'm sure it's going to be a great success, and I'm putting a lot of faith in it, really. I'd like to end with a plea. If anybody, supplier, buyer, whatever out there, comes across any instances of something that's worked, bring it to the attention of the project team, because we certainly want to know about those things, and we want to learn from them, and we want to try and grow them and expand them wherever we can. Thanks very much.